All right. Welcome, everybody. And thank you for taking the time to join us here today. We're so grateful that, all of you have taken the time out of your day. We recognize that your time is valuable and we plan to use it wisely. We plan to provide you with as much value as we possibly can and get you on your way so that you can start implementing the things that we'll be sharing today. Let me go ahead and share my screen here real quick. And we will go ahead and dive in. Jason or Sam, you can give me a heads up, or give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen, and we will go from here. My name is Spencer. I am here with California Coast Escrow. With me, of course, is Jason Johnson with California Coast Escrow and Samantha Hayes. Samantha Hayes is a wonderful guest that we're very excited to have on with us today. She is going to be joining us as our transaction coordinator, veteran, and trainer. And so she's going to be sharing some fantastic information with all of us. Now, before we dive in, I want to just cover a couple quick housekeeping items. For one, I'm very grateful for all of you. One of the things that I love about working with our transaction coordinators is that you guys are so prompt. I swear, as soon as that minute hour came across, like 90% of you were like locked and loaded and ready to go. When we typically hold these types of webinar presentations for some of our agent partners, it's about a 5 to 10 minute process before we get everybody in. The other thing I want to address here real quick is it looks like a few of you may have signed in as a panelist, which means that the functionality is going to be a little bit different. Unfortunately, I can't really tell who that may be. So if you're seeing that, if you're looking at our screen right now and you can see that you may not be joined as an attendee, the best thing to do would probably be to log out real quick and then log back in utilizing the link in the email that you'd likely received from the registration form. So if not, then you're totally fine where you are, but the functionality of the Zoom experience might be a little bit different. So I bet by now, just about everyone here has experienced a Zoom webinar before, but if you haven't, then you should know at the bottom of your screen, there's a couple of options. There's a Q&A box, a chat box, and those I recommend that you use as we move throughout the presentation this afternoon. I would recommend that you mainly utilize the Q&A. For any questions that come up throughout the course of today's presentation, please throw it in there, because when we get to the very tail end, we're going to open it up for a handful of these questions. We're going to be sharing a lot of information about the economy, a lot of information about how to create unique value propositions. And so as those questions come to mind, just be cognizant of that and throw it in there. So let me see if I can just, let me mute here real quick. There we go. Okay, so without further ado, one final thing here before we dive in. We know that the state of the economy that we're in right now, the state of our real estate environment, is extremely volatile. It's very unique. It's an environment in which many of us have never experienced before. And we share what we're going to share with you, to some extent with great empathy, because we recognize that for many of you, now might not be a really wonderful time. And unfortunately, a lot of what we're going to be sharing for this first segment of today's presentation may not feel extremely optimistic, but please know we share it with you because we believe it's extremely important to understand in order to better position yourself for growth for the months to come and what we foresee to take place economically and in our real estate market. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Jason here, who's going to dive in and give us a little bit of an update on the market economy. From there, then we're going to talk about some of the major forces that are at play that are causing the economy that we're experiencing today, right? The extreme levels of volatility, the interest rates as they are, the money printing that we've been seeing from a national level. And then we're going to talk about what to do about it. How does this personally affect you and your transaction coordinating business, and how you can best position yourself in our economy right now in order to, essentially grow as much as you possibly can while also retaining as many clients as you possibly can as well by adding more value. And then as I've mentioned, we're going to open it up for a Q&A. So Jason, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Answer. So I was originally trained as an economist way back when, and they call economists the dismal science. And unfortunately, this is right on. It's not a particular fun presentation, but hopefully we get some good info out of it. So our first slide here is pretty self-explanatory, right? September, we were down about 33%. So year over year. So across all of Southern California, we closed third last houses that we did this time last year. Year to date, 20%. The numbers here at the bottom, the ones in blue, are actually looking healthier, continue to get a little healthier out of the pandemic craziness we saw, which was admittedly crazier to the upside. But we're actually getting some inventory back on the market. The time on market is leveling out. I believe 30 to 45 days was a traditional average. We were at 20 minutes a few months ago. So we're averaging out there, and the prices are stabilizing and starting to come down as far as list to price. So those are all the good news. There's a lot on the bigger scale, a lot of macro things going on right now that are affecting our niche little real estate market. Some of the major forces you're going to see the news about, inflation, right? Everybody's well aware of inflation now, and it continues to go up. Everybody's trying to go all in on fighting that. Those fighting of inflation is leading to the higher mortgages. Excuse me. The costs are going up. Things like Social Security and government outlays continue to increase. We're having some issues with supplies, as demonstrated by this 25 days of diesel supply. During the pandemic, folks were able to put some money in their bank accounts and save. They weren't going out. There was nothing to buy. So they were able to accumulate some savings. Fortunately, over the last couple of months, because of the inflation and everything else, the savings have dwindled, and those are kind of gone. If you go back real quick, Spencer, this one was kind of what kicked off the idea of this, the treasury bonds and worrying about adequate liquidity. Just a couple quick definitions to keep in the back of your mind when you hear this presentation or read news stories anywhere else. Folks talk about liquidity, they're talking about buyers, right? A liquid asset is something that you can sell, and if nobody's going to buy it, it's not liquid. So when the Treasury Secretary, who's the one issuing the government bonds, is talking about problems with liquidity in bond markets, they're saying they're a little bit worried about being able to sell the bonds. Bond markets you should think of as credit cards. Unlike a mortgage where there's a physical asset, a house that can be foreclosed upon if there's an issue paying, a bond is a piece of paper that says, I'm going to pay you back more money in the future. And the Federal Reserve, the one that is kind of our boogeyman right now for raising all the rates, the Federal Reserve is not actually a part of the government. The board of directors is appointed by the government, but the Federal Reserve itself is a series of private banks. So it's not a government entity, although they work hand in hand. It's a central bank for the U.S., but it is a private. They are private banks and not part of it. So just a couple things to keep in the back of your head. What all this is resulting in is really pulling two directions, right? Opposing forces. On the one side, we've had inflation, and what's been causing inflation is, the massive government deficit spending. We're just spending so much money. There's a war in Ukraine right now. I'm sure everybody's heard of. There's things that are going on in China. And again, these are the big macro forces that are affecting our tiny economy, right? There's a lot of weird stuff going on in China. We could have 3 hours plus of just talking about what's going on in their real estate market, with their company, and with their manufacturing. All of that can be summarized as China is pushing up inflation right now. And then the dwindling resources, like I mentioned, we in Southern California, we all know about water issues. There's gas issues, the diesel we talked about. So that's all pushing inflation up. And so now comes the Federal Reserve to try to fight inflation and tamp it down. And so they're doing their best. And as prices rise, that also should help inflation, right? Because things cost more, can't buy as much, lowers demand. And then that leads to the slowing economy. So both of those are supposed to help fight inflation. And so right now they're pulling in different directions. Talk about the deficit spending. Well, this is a chart from the last 12 months from the US government's deficit spending. This number, the small number down in the bottom right, it shows basically spending about $100 billion a month more than we take in. So that's $100 billion that the government is putting on credit cards. That's $100 billion that they're essentially injecting into the economy, because that money goes somewhere from nowhere. So it's basically putting that $100 billion every month. And again, more money is pushing that inflation up. Just a clip I found here.
As good as money, sir. Those are IOUs.
So if we remember, bond markets, credit cards, they're basically just promises. There's nothing physical behind them. They're big IOUs. So push all of this money, all of these external forces in, prices go up. This is an inflation graph. We could have another discussion on how accurate we think the reported inflation numbers are. You're feeling it. You see it every time you go to the store. I definitely feel it. I think these numbers are actually a little higher. They play around with them a little bit. They use to help keep them, artificially lower. I think they're actually higher, but either way, even recognized rates of inflation are at 40-year highs. So what we say, the Fed comes in, Federal Reserve has a mandate to help keep employment high and to help keep inflation low. The number one tool in their toolbox to fight inflation is to raise rates. Their base rate translates into mortgage rates, and that's what we've seen. Over the last 6 months, it's the fastest increase in rates in the last 50 years. So it's not necessarily the largest ultimate raises, but it's the fastest that any of us have ever seen in our entire lives. We're seeing that's happening to the market. That has the direct result on the real estate market. We talked about credit cards and bonds. Well, somebody has to buy those bonds. So in addition to the Federal Reserve's dual mandate, there's also what's called the buyer last resort. And so you can see this is Federal Reserve US bond purchase. So the US Treasury issues a bond, issues an IOU to pay in the future, and those private banks come and buy those. The Federal Reserve has a ton of them, right? They have rooms full of them, tons sitting on their books. Another way they're using to fight inflation and tamp down the economy is to now let those bonds expire, to sell them back into the market. When they sell them back into the market, it pulls cash out of the market, helps tamp down. Hopefully, the hope is that that helps tamp down inflation as well. You can see how we leveled off here at the top, and it's actually starting to decrease. So at the same time, the US government is trying to sell more bonds. The Federal Reserve is trying to not buy them and is trying to sell theirs as well. So again, these opposing forces pulling us in multiple directions. So we'll go through the recap just real quick. Inflation high, a bunch of, right? The two that we focused on today, and I know I went through this very, very fast. We could spend a lot of time and honestly, the boring detail going into monetary policy and into machinations behind it all. But inflation is high. The Fed is trying to fight inflation. The things that the US government is doing is actively pushing inflation up. And so the two biggest external forces that affect our real estate market, each working directly against each other. Now, why is that important? The first question we have, we saw what happened to the number of transactions, seeing what's happening in the real estate market. When is that going to change, right? When is this going to turn around and go back to normal? Because of these opposing forces, it's very difficult to make educated guesses on that. What we can say with almost certainty is that it's going to continue to slow down through the end of the year. Some people smarter than me are predicting 20 to 25% slower than when we are right now. There's some folks out there that are predicting a rebound in Q1 of next year. I don't know that I necessarily am feeling that, but the takeaway is it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's a tough time now. There's a lot of things out there fighting each other that I think are going to wind up making it even worse. Take a look at things, make your own decisions, and when you're ready to move forward, we're here to help you through these tough times. And that's when I turn to Spence. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And I'll just echo what Jason just mentioned about, how, again, as I mentioned at really the top of this webinar, that we recognize that a lot of those statistics, a lot of those numbers that Jason just walked through, they're not horribly optimistic. We know that. But the thing is that we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same industry here as an escrow company, transaction coordinators, our agent partners, our lender partners, right? Everybody who we work with, we're all facing the same horizon. And right now, we believe that it's of utmost importance that we have a really solid understanding of what's taking place in the economy so that we can appropriately position ourselves. And so the rest of today's presentation, we're going to be talking about what does this mean, right? What does all of this mean? Because nobody has a crystal ball and we can't with confidence say it's going to last X long or, for this many years or for this many months. Hopefully it's months, not years, but because nobody knows, we have to plan accordingly. And our argument to this question of, how does this impact your transaction coordinating business, or how does this impact you in your personal lives? The answer, we believe, is that now more than ever, it's important to convey your unique value proposition to your clients. What I mean by that is that we have to be able to become indispensable to our clients. Real estate is and always has been a contact sport. It comes down to the number of individuals that you can serve reliably and consistently over time. And so if the number of contacts that you have right now is not supporting your business, according to what Jason just shared, recognizing that there's the potential of maybe a 20 to 30% decline from where we are right now, well, we need to be changing things. We need to be doing things in order to supplement that potential decline. And again, this is all for, the betterment of business. So what we wanted to do from here on out, and actually part of the reason why I'm so excited that Sam joined us, is we recognize that when it comes to adding value, right, this is how we create a unique value proposition, that sometimes, and unfortunately, a lot of transaction coordinators fall into this common pitfall, is that sometimes we can extend ourselves too far. We can do too much. We can step a little bit too far outside of perhaps our scope of what we should be doing for our clients. And so we not only want to share a handful of ideas of how to add more value so that you can become indispensable to your clients. But we also want to look at it through the lens of how do we also remain compliant, and how do we filter these different ideas based upon our current situation, our current licensure, et cetera, et cetera. So with that being said, that's why Samantha Hayes is here with us. She's, as I mentioned, a veteran transaction coordinator and a trainer of many other transaction coordinators. And she knows this down pat. She has a very solid understanding of what we can do, what we can't do. And for any questions that come up here in this next segment, please, as I mentioned, throw them in the Q&A. But Sam, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts. I know that you spent some time and put together kind of this formula that you use to analyze how to add more value. So I'll hand it off to you.
Well, I'd love to say I created it. Luckily, I found something that kind of was my mindset, so I was able to share that from Canva. As we all know, our customers all have many, many needs, and agents run the gamut from being in part of a brokerage where they have a full setup where they've got marketing and everything else to individual brokers on their own who have nobody to help with certain things. What we need to do as transaction coordinators moving forward, because with all the doom and gloom, and everybody knows I usually like to throw my glitter on it, here's the reality. Whatever is going to fill your tank is what you need to be doing to keep going. All the extra things that make you happy, that you enjoy, that's what you're going to need to do. If you are in this industry for money, just money only, you can't stand it, this is not the time. Really, it's time to look for another opportunity. This needs to be coming from a place of service and a place of what sparks your joy, in all honesty. So with that being said, kind of setting this up, when you look to your customers and what their needs are, we all have different backgrounds that brought us into real estate. Typically, if you're a transaction coordinator, you have more of an administrative brain or administrative background. Taking a look at what pieces of that are unlicensed TC activities that you could assist your client with. A lot of times we'll hear things about writing contracts or that you'll do this for a fee and those type of things. And we'll get into that more as we go through the slides. But remember, right now, when money's tight, things become more litigious, and people become more resentful, and people become less flexible about what they're willing to overlook, or, hey, we shouldn't be doing this, slap on the wrist. So you need to keep in mind, while we're all hungry, we're also starting to get a little grumpy. And so be careful about how you're protecting yourself. So with that, we've defined our customer needs. We've taken a look and said, hey, there's all these different things I could do. I see you need some help. I see you're struggling agent. What can I do to help you through this season that we're going through? How much does that change your customer service? What does that change for your daily business? What does that change for your time frames, your hours? What is the cost? Even though it may not be money out of pocket, there's still a cost to you, what you're doing. If suddenly doing somebody's mail merges are going to take you 12 hours a day and you're not getting enough financial being, I guess, compensated, adequately, it's not worth it. And I know we like to lowball because we're trying to help out our agents, but you need to be reality based. How long will this take you? How much time is it going to take away from your other businesses? Would you be better served doing some marketing? So that's what you've got to look at. Then you need to define. You've got to be real clear on those boundaries of like, what are these services that you're going to do? What are these upgrades? What are these additions? I will, check out your database, but I'm not going to do the mail merge. I will set up your social media templates, but I'm not going to do the posting for you. Those type of things, you want to be incredibly clear about what these extra added services you're doing and how far you want to go with them. Then it's also the conditions for some concessions. Sometimes you may have a client that they're a little bit older and this is going to be their one mail merge and you're going to help with the Christmas cards and that's it. And you can do it watching your Hallmark movies. Great. Then okay, maybe that's the time. If it's something where it's it's starting to put a threat on your business or your license, that's not something to me that's worth concessioning. And then you make it all pretty, put it all together, and you get it out to your clients. And you make sure that they're conveyed, hey, I know things are different. I've got some time on my hands right now. How can I help you? What can I do to be of service for your business? That's kind of how you go with it. Now, going back to this, which has been an issue before, and just a reminder for those of us that don't either know or don't know, we got 3 different levels of being TC. So you have your unlicensed, which means you don't get to do anything with the contracts. You can get signatures. You have to follow exactly what California, and there's a professionals code, as well as I can send you a PDF showing exactly what is allowed, what's not allowed with the transactions. You can also make sure what software you're allowed to access, because with unlicensed access, I know things happen in the industry, but I'm going to tell you what we're supposed to do. And so you want to make sure that you're not borrowing things or using tools that are not something you have the rights to. Something to take a look at when you're offering all these extra services to help out these agents and trying to step up your business. There's a balance. Then if you're like me, I'm a licensed agent, but I work for different brokerages. So when I'm not working for anybody who's under the same broker that I am, I cannot do anything that is at all like an agent. I have to follow the same rules as an unlicensed TC. I need to make sure that I am abiding by all the different rules, not sharing more information, not overstepping, staying in my lane, which is really frustrating when we want to provide service. I also carry an E&O policy of $1 million for me as a transaction coordinator, because my broker's E&O, even though he's responsible for anything I do as an agent, will not cover me as a TC. And when that comes up a lot of times too, people question, why do I need that? They're not going to sue me. You're right. Buyer and seller are probably not going to sue you, but guess who will? The agents, the brokerage. It's going to trickle down. They do a net thing. It's a good practice to have it. You also probably want to have a discussion with the broker who owns your license, that they're aware that you do transaction coordination outside of that brokerage. You want to make sure everybody knows this is going on in the up and up, because that is going to be a very quick way to release you from that association. Then if you are TCing for where your license is hung, you can act just like an agent. You have full range, because you, again, verify all with your broker of record, your E&O, what your agreement is with them specifically. But if you were licensed and under that same broker, you should be able to draft the contracts, do the request for repairs, everything along those lines, because again, you're acting almost as a co-agent. They may require an AA, which is the additional agent addendum that goes into some liability. So you may want to take a look again of what you want to do and how you want to balance this out. And again, double check your E&O brokerage, make sure you're covered as a TC as well as working with.
Awesome. I love that. No, thank you, Sam. That's phenomenal. This is really meant to be, and what I really like about it is that it's a step-by-step guide, right? It's step one, have a deep understanding of your licensure and know what you can and cannot do based upon, license first. Then I'll just go back here real quick. Mm-hmm. Then once we have an idea of perhaps a unique value proposition that we want to present to a client, right? An agent in this case, we first have to kind of run it through this step-by-step process to analyze it and determine whether or not it's actually worth our time and energy. Again, assuming that it's within scope, but that it's worth our time and energy to actually provide. I would add one final thing to this, and that is, does it scale? One important thing is that we don't want to just be doing more work for the sake of doing more work. And I have found a lot of, the agent partners that we work with and a lot of transaction coordinators that, because of the sheer, decline in productivity, that sometimes we find ourselves maybe just panicking and wanting to put our hands on something. And so I would be cautious of that. Make sure that the time and energy that you spend putting these things together, adding more value, perhaps providing more services to your clients, make sure it's worth it, and make sure that it can scale. Because at the end of the day, when things get busy again, and they will, right? We live in it's a cyclical industry that we're in. So when they do get busy again, you're going to be, kicking yourself that, man, I can't believe I wrapped myself into this. So I love that. I really like that step-by-step approach. Now, with that lens, with that understanding and that step-by-step process, I want to share with you and of course, solicit a little bit of feedback from Sam here as well. But I want to share with you some of the needs and some of the foundational approaches to start identifying ways to add more value. And the first step is really to have a deep understanding of what do your clients need. It just so happens that as an escrow company and as a transaction coordinator, we serve the same client, right? We serve real estate agents and of course, buyers and sellers and any other party that participates in the transaction as well. But for today's conversation, we're going to focus on what are the needs of your agent clients. Over the years, we have identified that most agents have some core needs and they're listed here. These needs are based upon, our experience that we've had with, working with all of our agent partners. And of course, just throughout the course of time, but one of the first needs, as you see, is freed up time, right? In other words, they need to be able to spend as much time as they possibly can in the highest and best use of their time, right? So it's interesting and important to know that the majority of an agent's time is spent prospecting. Very little time is actually spent servicing a client, right? Performing the transaction, closing the transaction, because that's actually really done by you and by us as the escrow company. So the agent, they're really looking for, how can I free up more of my time to spend it in the highest and most efficient use, which is being with my clients, which means that they need assistance in terms of perhaps lead generation and doing things of that sort. Secondly, they desperately need help with transaction support. We all know some of our agent clients who would not know heads or tails from being able to actually close an escrow once it's been opened. And so that's where, you guys come in, clutch, right? It's such a critical aspect. Otherwise, agents wouldn't be able to do what they do. Business administration. Again, most agent partners are, they're charismatic, they're creative type, they're very much so, people, but not so much so, organizational and administrative in that sense. And so they know how to perhaps get business, but they have a difficulty of kind of running their business. The ease of the process is another need. Really, this is a universal need that we all share. How can we make the process as easy as possible for our agent partners? The more that we do this, I promise you, the more indispensable you will become in their eyes. If by working with you, their job is easier, then you better believe they're going to continue working with you when your competition makes it not as easy, right? And then outstanding communication, right? This is a core pillar that actually we share from, transaction coordination, but also an escrow company and any other vendor that participates in the transaction. We have to make sure that we're keeping everybody up to speed and in the know of what's going on at every single stage along the way. So with those needs in mind, and within the lens and through the lens that Sam shared with you, this is how we can analyze and identify ways to add more value and become more indispensable to our clients. So, we listed a few there, but keep in mind what's listed below are really just examples so that you can start to categorize, where does my value truly lie? In what area of the needs of my clients are the services that I'm providing reside? And then that way you can essentially take a look at it and say, okay, how can I make the process even easier than it is right now? What could I potentially do that is within scope and that remains compliant and that keeps me void of any legal risk, that could make the process as easy as possible, or that could provide a better level of communication to the client, or that could perhaps free up more of their time. This is kind of that step-by-step process that can be really helpful as you're starting to add more value and provide more services to your clients. Any thoughts, either Sam or Jason? I'd love to hear any thoughts.
What's the thing you have the biggest problem with your agents? Like that's where you start. If you have a problem with them, there's a disconnect, because conflict only arises when expectations differ. So if you know they are never getting you stuff on time, or they're never getting your listings, or they always do something that's incorrect on the paperwork, have a conversation with them. Find out what you can do within that to either help educate them. You can set up their templates if there's something they're always missing. Is there a broker affiliated? Little things like that. If you know there's issues, start there. If you're like, I don't know what else to do, because that's where you need to focus. Like people, it's really hard to go, oh, well, I want this. You know what you don't want. That's an instantaneous response. So if there's a problem, you know where you're like, oh no, they always this point. That's where you start, because then you're going to show value almost instantaneously, because you've removed a barrier. You've removed something that's causing delays.
I love it. Awesome.
Sam's absolutely right. Just, this is a personal business, right? It's a relationship-based business. And so it's not one shiny widget that's going to be your proposition that'll work for everyone. It's really understanding on a personal level the individuals that you're dealing with, and developing what you're good at and what you enjoy doing, and matching those up. That's where you're going to find the best success.
Yep, absolutely. I would offer maybe one final piece of advice, at least on this topic, before we move on. And that is that, you know, the best person to ask in terms of how to add more value, it's your clients. That is the best source of information. But then, of course, keep in mind, as we all know, agents have a tendency of asking for the world. And so we have to take their feedback, right? Solicit and take their feedback, and then view it through the lens that we've just laid out, utilizing that step-by-step formula and within scope and compliance of what you're capable of actually providing. But your clients are the best source of information to know, how can I add more value? What could I potentially do to make your job even easier than it is now? I've had, many of the TCs that we work with do this, and, contact maybe their top 10 clients and ask them those questions. And you'd be surprised at how easy some of their needs can be fulfilled, right? You know what I mean by that, right? How with very little effort, you can exceed their expectations. If only we were to ask, right? So that, I believe, is a great place to start. I want you guys to know that you're not alone in this. We've reiterated that a handful of times throughout today's webinar, but even when it comes to adding value and creating a unique value proposition to distribute to your clients, you're not alone in this, and we want to help you with it to the best of our ability. So if you feel like you could improve upon the value that you add, and maybe improve upon perhaps some of the marketing distribution channels that you have in place right now, then that's something that we'd love to, meet with you on a one-on-one type basis and assist you with. So keep that in mind as we kind of move forward. That's something that we're here to help with. I'd like to share with all of you a little bit about the unique value propositions that we've created as an escrow company. We know that whenever we open a file and we see that we're working with a great transaction coordinator, we get really excited about it, because we know that the better the transaction coordinator, the easier our job is, right? And we love that. And so we really commend all of you for the hard work that you put in. We recognize that, your job is not easy. It is not easy in the slightest, and you do it extremely well. And as a result of doing it really well, you make everyone else's load even lighter, including ours as an escrow company. And so we equally want to do as much as we can to make your process, your job, your life as easy as it possibly can be. So we wouldn't be able to do any of those things if we didn't have a phenomenal escrow team behind us with Jen, Summer, Holly Ann. Collectively, what's so unique about this team of ours is that they have over 30 years of experience, not just combined experience, but 30 years working together of experience, which is phenomenal. They are a well-oiled machine. And so we wouldn't be able to provide what I'm about to share with you if we didn't have our escrow team to be able to do what they do on the escrow side of things to close files as smoothly as possible. So a couple of the unique value propositions that we provide. The first, of course, is that we upfront the cost of the HOA doc prep fees. This is one of the most common roadblocks that can come up upon opening escrow, right? And from a customer experience standpoint, it's not the smoothest when the seller gets a phone call from escrow saying, "Hey, congrats on opening escrow. Can I get a credit card?" Because now we have to, order the HOA docs. So we actually cover the cost of those dues. We cover the cost of those that HOA doc prep fee so that the seller doesn't have to worry about it. This streamlines the process and reduces the likelihood that it's a headache for the seller. And then we get reimbursed at the close of escrow. In addition to that, we provide a complimentary mobile seller notary. So we recognize that location is extremely important. And our services are now, actually they have been for years, nearly 100% virtual and paperless. We do business all throughout California. And for that, we want to make sure that getting documents in and getting everything that we need is also easy for all of our clients involved. So we provide that complimentary mobile seller notary as well. In addition to that, our core function as an escrow company is communication, making sure that every party within the transaction is well informed of where we are at any particular time throughout the transaction. And so we make sure that we hit those milestones immediately as they take place. The last one that I want to mention to you actually is specific to our transaction coordinating partners. This was developed in fact, by the owner of California Coast Escrow, which is Jennifer Mendigutia, one of our senior escrow officers. And she'll be the first one to tell you how much she loves and appreciates the transaction coordinator partners that we work with because of how much hard work that they put in. They're truly an extension of our team, which is phenomenal. But she wanted to develop this, and she wanted to provide this TC compliance package that I'm going to share with you, because she wants to make, again, the process as easy as possible for you, because we recognize how easy you can make it for us. And so we want to likewise share that value back. So within that TC compliance package, how this works is, once received and upon request, we'll provide all of the following documents, in addition to many others. This is just a sampling of the TC compliance package, but the intent behind it is to essentially provide you with everything that you need as quickly as possible, all wrapped up and with a bow on it, so that you can check off those boxes on your list, likewise helping you get paid quicker, and again, making your process as smooth as it possibly can be. So we shared a lot of information today. We shared a lot of information about the economy on a micro level, as well as a macro level, on a national level and beyond. We also talked about how to analyze unique value propositions. We talked about the needs of agents and how to meet those needs specifically while remaining compliant. And then we talked a little bit about California Coast Escrow and some of the unique value propositions that we've created. I'm sharing this all with you so that again, that we're here to assist as we venture into this new environment that we're all experiencing, this new volatile market and real estate environment that we're going to be experiencing for the next couple of months, hopefully not too many months, but for the next little while. And we want to do it together. So if there was any aspect of this presentation that you have questions on, or that you would like to dive deeper into, we would love to meet with you on a one-on-one basis and do as much as we can to help you grow your business, even during a time of such uncertainty like what we're in right now. So again, we thank you for your time from all of us, and we want to open it up here for a couple of minutes to any questions that may have come across that we can answer right now on either one of those topics: the economy, unique value propositions, compliance. Any questions for either Jason or Sam or myself? So let me pull up our list here and we'll dive in. Okay. We did get one question, which I believe, Jason, you were able to capture already. This information, of course, is fairly specific to California, but of course, a lot of the general topics of the economy and how to create unique value propositions is applicable to everybody. One question here that we have is how do we expect the inventory levels to change as interest rates continue to rise? How would you respond to that, Jason?
We expect inventory to continue to trickle upward. There's another aspect we didn't really talk about, called kind of like the seller's trap. So as opposed to like the housing crash, 2007, 2008, when there were a bunch of subprime loans and everybody was getting foreclosed upon and forced movements, the current SoCal market is pretty stable as far as fixed rate, low interest, fixed rate people in houses. There's very few people underwater, and they have interest rates that they can't walk away from. So even if they want to move up into a bigger house, it's prohibitively expensive with their increased interest rates. And so they're kind of trapped. So that's helping to keep the inventory low. But as time goes on and the houses kind of sit there because they're not properly priced, it'll continue to trickle up, but I don't expect an explosion in the inventory.
Yeah, I would agree. This next question actually here is for Sam. As a transaction coordinator, what is one way that you found to best stay in front of your your clients I would assume I'm now projecting on top of this to add value or to nurture them continually?
Mine's been education. Part of why I became a car forms trainer was to be able to explain all the forms. I've stated in front of my agents for years, and also my escrow officers now too. I've been building a database since right as the pandemic started, or whatever we're supposed to call it. But basically is sending out, again, what went wrong that week. I do recap videos explaining, hey, this was a problem this week. Here's how we could have mitigated it. Here's what you need to know and why we shouldn't be doing it this way, or why this is the way it should be done, that type of thing. But yeah, it's been honestly a lot of education, getting them info and staying on top of the market, any little trends or anything that I'm aware of.
I love that. The reason why I really like that, Sam, is because we know that when it comes to converting a prospect, they have to believe that you are the subject matter expert on the topic, right? They have to believe that you're the authority. And so by educating them, you slowly become that authority in their mind, which is why when it comes to lead generation and marketing yourself and getting more clients, that I would agree with you is probably one of the best approaches. Is how can you add value in the form of education so that you can establish yourself as authority in the mind of your prospect, which is awesome.
And I'll be transparent. I've seen a lot of more and more, which I love. I'm super excited to see it, of TCs jumping into at least stagnant social media with graphics and things. But it's just, do you need a TC? Happy Halloween. Well, that's great. But it's like, as I keep saying, plumbers don't tell you how many times they flushed a toilet. That nobody cares. They just know that they were there at 2 a.m. and fixed it. How are you going to fix this agent's problem? What little tidbit or tip can you give them that will help them and kind of do the like, hey, I know about this stuff.
Yeah, awesome. The last question here, and then we'll answer any of the additional ones offline. But the last question that I want to address here is this: will competition increase or decrease due to the market changes that we're experiencing? That, and the way that I would answer that is actually, as we see the market decline or become more volatile, we will see a thinning, is what I would call it, a thinning of real estate agents. Unfortunately, a thinning of transaction coordinators, a thinning of escrow companies. Things are going to kind of hamper down a little bit. And many people, right, the knee-jerk reaction when this takes place is to take your foot off the gas, right? Stop spending money on marketing. Stop doing the marketing activities that perhaps you were doing before in the past because you're uncertain of what's going to happen. That's actually the opposite of what I would suggest that you do. When things like this happen and we're experiencing a thinning, competition goes down because the sheer number of competitors goes down. Real estate professionals, TC professionals, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is actually a great time, if you have the proper mindset, to be able to grab more market share in the essence of, you know, real estate agents, right? Real estate clients. So that's how I would respond to that, is that don't take your foot off the gas, right? If you have the right mindset, if you can develop the right mindset, now is a great time that you can actually press forward and grow your business in a pretty substantial way.
Well, and Spencer, I'd piggyback on that, exactly what you're saying, but also make sure, even though the competition is going down, the quality of your competition is going to go up, because you may be less people, but the ones that are surviving are those of us that either been in the industry, are quality, or educated. So how do you compete with that? Up your education. You should be taking every class possible, attending every webinar possible. As I call it, YouTube University, get your certifications. Maybe now's the time to get your license if you don't have one. But yes, the volume of competition will go down. The quality will not, because that's what's going to survive.
That's an awesome distinction. I think that's spot on. Well, thank you again, everybody, for taking the time to join us. I will be sending out a summary of what we've talked about today, along with the recording, because again, I know we shared a lot of information that I would recommend that you go back and review, especially on the economy side of things. So we appreciate your time. For any questions and for any additional insight into any of these topics that we've discussed, please reach out to us. We'd love to work with you and see what we can do to really help one another. So have a great rest of your afternoon, and we will talk to all of you soon. Thank you, everybody. Bye.